Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the December meeting of Safe Silver Spring. This is our quarterly meeting with the Montgomery County Police Department. We're pleased to have as our guest tonight the commander of the police department's 3rd district, David McBain, and his lieutenants. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Commander McBain, and I will feature him with a spotlight. Commander McBain.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Alan. So tonight, what I'm going to do for the first time is I have a PowerPoint that I'm gonna play. I hope I can share my screen. But before I do that, what I want to do is introduce my newest lieutenant, Tony Galladora, and I just want to give him a few seconds, a minute or so, to introduce himself and tell you where he's come from in the department, and I'm hoping to keep him here for a while. So I'll turn it over to Tony.
Thank you, Commander. Tony Galladora was born and raised in Montgomery County. Both my parents were police officers. I've been on the department about 18 years, and actually prior to even joining the department, I actually was an intern at the Silver Spring District back in about 2003. So kind of little experience here a while ago. I started off my police career 7 years in Wheaton, then about 8 years in Bethesda as a sergeant working in the Central Business District there. Once I got promoted to lieutenant, they moved me over to headquarters for about a year, and then over to special operations for about 2 years. So I'm here now. I'm very excited to be here and get to work and getting to know and meet everyone down here. So thank you very much for hosting and for everybody who's attending today. So thank you.
All righty. I'm gonna share my screen, Alan. Let's see here. Give me a second. Hold on. I'm hoping it'll come up. Bear with me 1 second. I worked on this hard. So
And you should be enabled.
okay. Did it show?
Not yet.
All right, hold on. This is when I need Lieutenant Kim.
You just have to click on the share screen button.
Yeah, I did. Hold on. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yep.
Here we go.
All right, but let me see if I can bring up.
You're up. Yeah.
Yep, hold on. How's that?
There you
see
go.
that?
Yep.
All right, so let me see if I can start my. Here we go.
All right. See?
All right. Thanks for bearing with me there. Okay, so for those of you that have been on the calls throughout the year, you recognize that I've gone through a few lieutenants. I think on our last call, Lieutenant Tanisha Jensen was here, but she has been moved to the academy, and that's how I picked up Tony Galladora. But currently, I'm the commander, and Lieutenant Dave Reed, Lieutenant Tony Galladora, and Sung Young Kim are still with me. However, before the call's over, you can say goodbye to Lieutenant Kim because she's going to the chief's office, and I'll be picking up another lieutenant sometime in January. So you guys can say your goodbyes to her then. All right. So there you go. All right. So a lot of times people ask me, when I talk about George sector, Henry sector, or Ida sector, what am I talking about? So what I did was I gave you an idea of what the 3rd district looks like and how we have boundaries or borders with the District of Columbia and Prince George's County. So as you know, the 3rd district's broken down into 3 sectors: George, Henry, and Ida. and you can see them here on the map. And then each of those sectors is broken down into a beat. So each sector has 2 beats: George 1, George 2, Henry 1, Henry 2, Ida 1, Ida 2. So that's that. And so hopefully people understand what I'm talking about sometimes when I do use the phonetics. So let's talk about the year. This year, the 3rd District police officers handled 66,212 calls for service. Try to wrap your brain around that, but that's about 150 officers that responded to these calls. And we're still not done with the year. So we've got a couple more weeks to go. And then as you see, the map that I've provided is a heat map, and you can see where a majority of the work that we're doing is happening. And that's downtown Silver Spring, which is really my hottest area on the heat map. But also the purplish area between the 3 Henry 2 and 3 Ida 1, that's White Oak. And then farther up towards the 198 corridor, that's the Briggs, Cheney, and Burtonsville area. But basically that hot spot up there is Briggs, Cheney. So there's where you can see where we're doing, running quite a few calls and where we're operating in the district. All right. All right, so let's talk about our crime statistics and kind of a comparison from last year. So when I did the comparison from 2021 and 2022, our burglaries were up 32%. Now, when you're talking about the burglaries, that's everything from breaking into a home and also breaking into a shed. And that's where really the numbers are coming from, is the shed burglaries that we're experiencing up in the Ida sector. And so the tough part about that, that's a regional crime. We're seeing that in Howard County, Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County. And it seems like whenever we make a good arrest, there's just another couple guys that will kind of fill the gap and start breaking into houses, or I'm sorry, into sheds. But really, that's why we've seen an increase in the burglaries. And we'll continue to deal with this issue and put resources into the areas when we can. But quite frankly, when I'm dealing with a lot of violent crime or persons crimes, the property crimes kind of fall back a little bit. Not to say that we're not responsible for them, but as I've said many times in this call, we have to prioritize things. Destruction of property and vandalisms, that's down 12%. Theft and larcenies are up 10%. Motor vehicle thefts are down 11%, and that's a good thing, because we really had some high numbers last year, specifically down in the downtown Silver Spring area. And so it's good to see that number is starting to drop a little bit. Unfortunately, and I'm not trying to hide anything, I never have been, but our robberies are up about 26%. Again, a large number of those robberies are downtown Silver Spring. But we do have them throughout the entire district, in our Henry sector, in our Ida sector, in all these neighborhoods. So that's going to be something that we really continue to focus on as we move into 2023. So weapons and firearms is up 51%. And as you see, what I put here is that's a good number, because that means that we're seizing a lot of guns. Unfortunately, the guns are out there, but we're getting a fair share of those guns. And that 51% is a positive number for you to see. And I'm very happy about that. And we're going to talk more about firearms in a later slide. The drugs, narcotics numbers up 111% increase. Really, I think why you see this number so high is because we have slowly but surely progressed into a proactive style of policing again. And we are making some good arrests when it comes to narcotics and other drug arrests. And so I'm happy to see that that number is up as well. Assaults are down 2.5%. And man, I shouldn't have opened my mouth in our last meeting, but unfortunately, I've had a series of homicides over the since November. I will say, though, the 2 homicides that were in the Piney Branch area down off of Southampton and Colony, We've made 2 arrests in those homicides. And then my most recent homicide up in the White Oak area at the Shell gas station. I'm very proud to say that within probably about 12 hours, we had that individual in custody. And as most people probably know from the call, not only did we have the clerk of the Shell station murdered, but when we executed a no-knock search warrant in the morning, that very morning, we discovered a female that had been deceased in the apartment as well. And on top of that, she was approximately, I think, 39 weeks pregnant. And so the suspect was charged with not only the female deceased, but the child that she was carrying. So that brought my numbers of homicides up to 5. But in 2021, as you see, I had 10 at this time. So 22 didn't end exactly how I wanted to, but we did end with some good arrests and some solid police work. And I will tell you that, especially with the Shell gas station homicide, the reason we identified that individual so quickly was a lot of patrol officers providing information and being able to identify that suspect, because they work the area and they do a lot of work, knowing the people in the neighborhood. So, we'll see. I'd like to think that December is gonna kind of stay quiet, and I hope it does. So let's talk about carjackings. Obviously, probably my most serious, one of the most serious crimes I deal with. But Montgomery County had, well, right now we're sitting at 74 carjackings in 2022. The 3rd district, we've had 33 of those carjackings. That's 1 down from our 2021 numbers. Those majority of carjackings are in downtown Silver Spring. But as you can see with the 2 maps, so just to give it some context here, the green are this year's carjackings. The yellow were last year's carjackings. The blue dot up in the top, that is our most recent carjacking, where it was in progress and we made an arrest. Basically closed out multiple carjackings. So I'm very happy to see that blue dot there. And then the red dots are actually 2020 carjackings, where we were tracking them back as far back as September of 2020. Now, the other map that you see there, that's where we've recovered our carjacked vehicles. And as you can see, it's a majority of them in the District of Columbia. There's a couple in Tacoma Park, and then also you see there's some in Prince George's County. I think it just kind of lends itself to the fact that a lot of the crime that we're seeing is being committed by suspects that don't live in Montgomery County, and that come into Montgomery County, do crime, and then try to get back to their jurisdictions of where they live. So that's something we're going to continue to focus on. We have a great relationship with the District of Columbia and Prince George's County. In fact, in our most recent homicide up in White Oak, we utilized Prince George's County's helicopter to assist us with tracking and looking for the suspect in the area of White Oak. And we do the same thing with all of our carjacking. When we get hits or when we see carjacked vehicles, we utilize resources from the District of Columbia and Prince George's County. Just to give this some, look, I'm not happy about 33 carjackings, but just to give you a little comparison, I've talked about this before. Prince George's County and the District of Columbia have each exceeded 400 carjackings. So I'd like to say that, we do a good job about knocking down crime and being visible, high visibility efforts. And I think it's made a difference. And I think that that's why Montgomery County's numbers are not as high as Prince George's and DC. So although I'm not happy with 33, I'm certainly very thankful that it's not 400. So I'm going to move on. So here's where we're going to talk about the firearms and other weapons violations. So as of this morning, I checked, Montgomery County seized 1,137 firearms. The 3rd district officers have seized 232 of those firearms. And we've also seized 46 PMFs or ghost guns out of the 173 seized countywide. I will say that the 3rd District, we've seized more PMFs than any other district in the county. And it's really as a result of high visibility traffic stops and proactive policing. I've talked a lot about our DCAT. 3 DCATs comprised of it's a sergeant, a corporal, and 5 police officers. They primarily work downtown Silver Spring, but also they work in other regions of the district. But in the short period of time that they've been operating, they've seized 27 firearms, primarily from traffic stops. So really happy to see, this is one of those things where I'm happy to see the numbers that we're getting. It's just unfortunate that we've seized so many guns, but it gives everybody an idea of what we're actually dealing with out there. It's violent, and we're doing a really good job seizing a lot of firearms. I would say that these 232 firearms probably also leads in the county from all other 5 districts as well. So very proud of the proactive work being done by my officers. So I talked about this too, mental health and homelessness. This just gives you a perspective. I've talked about these numbers before. So when you're talking about the mental health world and how law enforcement's involved in it still, I've always been a proponent of reimagining policing and the police department kind of getting out of mental health and homelessness. But clearly, as we move into the end of the year, we're very much involved still. We've had 409 separate events dealing with mental health. And as you see the breakdowns, some of them were just transporting. Sometimes that's so the mental transport only. That could be when HHS or the crisis intervention teams make call us, and we'll transport for them. But as you can see, the vast majority of the transports are emergency petitions that Montgomery County police officers have responded to the scene and made the apprehension or placed the person into protective custody and transported them to an area hospital. So if you put all those 409 events together, and then let's hypothetically say that at least 2 officers are on those events, and you're taking those officers out of service for at least 2 hours, that's a significant impact on my manpower and what we're doing. So as we move into the end of the year and as we move into 2023, my hope is that HHS and some of the other private organizations can kind of take the lead in mental health and homelessness and kind of free my officers up to focus on violent crime. And also, so that's that. And then, homelessness, we deal with a lot of homelessness downtown, but we also have a significant homeless population over in the Long Branch, Piney Branch area. The picture that I have here, so Father Brian Jordan, who's the individual seated to the rear at the table, and another community member who's in the hat right there. Those 2 gentlemen and myself for the past couple months have been meeting with this group of homeless individuals at the library down in Long Branch, and we've talked about some short-term goals and then some long-term goals that I'm hoping that HHS can provide to them with possible housing and other services that the county has to offer. But the big thing for the short term that I was trying to deal with these individuals was actually kind of just cleaning up after themselves. They're in a very tough situation, but a lot of times, especially around the library, we were seeing, feces, lots of beer bottles and liquor bottles and trash. And so we just really focused on a short-term goal of, kind of making sure that their area where they're hanging out is kind of cleaned up. And they normally, at our request, they get moving in the morning at about 9 a.m. before the library opens at 10 o'clock. And it just kind of helps with the overall atmosphere down in Long Branch. But we continue to work with them. But my hopes is that HHS can kind of take the lead there as they do up in Progress Place. So good stuff down there, and we're going to continue to do that as long as we're needed. So community engagement and proactive community patrols. I kind of just went all the way around the horn here throughout the whole district, kind of picked and chose some things that we've been doing, in all three of the sectors. But Hillendale Adopt a Neighborhood program and community walks, that's something we've been doing for about 1.5 years now. That came out of the Balmoral Drive homicides that we had when I first became a commander down here. And so we started this Adopt a Neighborhood program where we have certain shifts or officers that meet with community members and kind of go over how things are going as far as our efforts with engagement. Eric Cathcart doesn't know this yet, but North Hills of Sligo Creek is going to become our second Adopt the Neighborhood program. And I'm hoping I can convince him to be the point of contact for that. And we'll talk about that more. But the Hillendale Adopt a Neighborhood program's been very successful. They've seen a significant decline in crime and just overall quality of life. Bike patrols in the Long Branch, Piney Branch area. This year, I trained 8 more police officers to ride mountain bikes. We started doing patrols in late summer. We've stopped those patrols in the winter, but I plan to pick them up in the spring and summer. So that's something that I believe helps us get out into the community and be far more visible than when you're in a police car. And then futsal, indoor soccer for 6th through 8th grade at the Long Branch Rec Center. That's something that we're currently doing right now, December 8th, 15th, and 22nd. On the 8th, just a few days ago, I believe we had approximately 40 youngsters that came in the evening and played soccer. Community engagement was there with us. My patrol officers were there as well. Some of my patrol officers were actually referees, and then we provided them with a dinner provided by El Golfo, which is a restaurant in the Flower Avenue, Piney Branch area. And it's a great way that we partnered with El Golfo, because we actually were working with them for the homeless issue. So it was a great way to kind of come full circle. We helped them out, and then they did a real solid for us with providing meals for these kids. So that program is awesome. And we're going to continue things like that in the future. I spoke about North Hills of Sligo Creek. This is pretty new, and Eric Cathcart and his group that in that area, we met the other night, and we talked about several issues that they're dealing with. And like I said, the Adopt a Neighborhood program is exactly how I'm going to address these issues, with not only traffic patrol, increased patrols for traffic, but also high visibility to deter theft and other crimes. The Woodside community, I know that Lieutenant Dave Reed has met with members of that community and discussed quality of life concerns. We did increase patrols, and actually, and I don't talk about this all the time, but we put a surveillance team up in that neighborhood for a couple weeks in between, and rotating them in between downtown Silver Spring. And the reasons we did that is to try to roll up on some of these theft from autos and auto thefts. And we're going to continue to things like that, especially with communities that are so close to downtown Silver Spring. Also in the Woodside community, we deployed our VMS board. That's a variable message board with just different messages about one-way traffic concerns. And we use that board quite a bit just to give direction to citizens about what we're doing in the community. White Oak 3-on-3 basketball, as some of you remember, we did that over the summer. And Lieutenant Kim, who's on the call, she was responsible for that. And we partnered with the Montgomery County Police Foundation and a whole bunch of other people. But that was really successful in the White Oak area. And my intentions are to go back and to do something like that this coming summer. And finally, Oakview community, we worked there with So they had, it was interesting. They were one of the communities that didn't have so much of a police concern, but more of a other quality of life things, trash, overgrown bushes and things like that. But they also had a very big parking complaint. And so my community traffic complaint officer, Craig Cupiello, went down there and spent quite a bit of time conducting traffic enforcement. And then also National Night Out. Obviously, that was a great night for us. We added downtown Silver Spring on Ellsworth as a new stop, but we intend to be back in it this year again, and hopefully being able to stop in the same locations. But the neat thing is that National Night Out was just another event for us. We were really in the community a lot this year, and I really prided our efforts because I understand that the police department's one of our major goals is crime fighting and to make the community safer. But what I've recognized is that the more engagement we can do and the more we can work with the community, the better outcomes that we have. And so we're going to continue going into 2023 with these same type of efforts. And I will tell you that I talked about a few neighborhoods here, but for those on the call, we're willing to do this just about anywhere. But you just got to remember that we only have so many officers. So I try to only keep one or two or three of the Adopt a Neighborhood programs going at any one time to be effective. So more to come on that. And so leading into 2023, it's going to be continued focus on downtown Silver Spring quality of life issues. As you saw from the heat map, that is where most of my issues are. But we're going to be deploying new county-owned camera systems. They're going to replace the ones that we were renting. And we're actually, so for those of you who didn't know, we were operating 2 camera systems in downtown Silver Spring, one on Georgia Avenue in front of Society Lounge. And then we were operating another one up on Bonifant near Lofts 24 and along Bonifant, because we were having so many issues with businesses staying open all night long and a lot of violent crime coming out of those businesses. So we pulled those rented cameras systems out. We are putting these camera systems back. However, we're moving them around a little bit. Bonifant's going to get their camera back. But we're going to put another camera system into the Ellsworth Fenton area and monitor some parking garage issues and some other areas down there. And then the third camera system that we're going to add on, we're actually going to put up in the Ida sector up into White Oak to really kind of address the homicide we had there, to kind of focus our efforts on the New Hampshire Avenue corridor in the area of Lockwood. And so I'm hoping we'll have a lot of success using those camera systems as not only a preventative measure, but also it provides us a lot of good information when we have crimes of, different descriptions of people, tag numbers, and it kind of gives us just a little bit more information to go on other than relying on witness information and what they tell us. So we're going to continue with those efforts. Community outreach. My goal is to really hyper focus on like a good, solid community outreach in all 3 of the sectors. And I'm going to put a lot of pressure on my lieutenants to kind of adopt some type of outreach program that they're going to oversee and kind of watch progress throughout the year. And so we're going to put a little bit of thought into what exactly we want to do. I will say that that one of the areas that we haven't been doing a lot of work in is the Burtonsville and Briggs Cheney area. And I would like to see some type of futsal or 3-on-3 basketball program that we can do up in that area. And so we're gonna really focus on doing things like that. I am going to increase the bike patrols in the Long Branch, Piney Branch area for Silver in the springtime and summer. And then also we're going to focus on community traffic complaints in all 3 sectors. And I know that I've talked to this group before, but I guess it was early last year, we did 30 for Hillendale, and that was, we were spending 30 minutes a day in the Hillendale area during peak times of rush hour for cut through traffic on certain cut through roads. And we found that to be very successful. So I know I went over a lot of stuff. I know that there's going to be people that are going to have some other questions, but I hope that I was able to provide you kind of an overview of what we've been doing and kind of show that that I'm not only dealing with downtown Silver Spring, but we're all over the district. And that was one of my main promises when I took over in 3D, and that was that that I wouldn't be hyper focused in just downtown Silver Spring, that I would not neglect the rest of the district. So I will take any questions.
Well, let me just say first, Commander McBain, that was an excellent presentation and it exceeded my expectations. So thank you very much. And maybe you can do that again in the future.
No problem.
Let me see. Anybody have any questions for Eric Cathcart? You've got a question.
Microphone.
I don't have a question, but I do want to recognize that we have Carleen Ponder, who is representing County Council member Christian Mink from District 5 with our group tonight. So wonderful to have our County Council members engaged. Thank you.
Commander McBain, do you want to have your lieutenants make presentations before we go to more general questions?
So really, Alan, my goal tonight was because I have outgoing lieutenants and new lieutenants coming in. I think that was it for the presentation, but I have a feeling that on some of the questions, they'll be able to help me out.
Okay, that's fine. People, you can put your questions in the chat. If you use the raise hand function, we will recognize you. But Commander, I wish you could briefly tell us sort of the status of the investigations with the homicide in Summit Hills and the situation, the shooting at the Veterans Plaza skating rink.
Yep.
So any updates on those?
So the Veterans Plaza shooting that we had several months ago, this is all I can tell you. We have a warrant for somebody. We're looking for that person. And I can't tell you any more than that. We haven't identified both subjects, but one of them we have. And as soon as we pick him up, I will report out, but we're still actively working on that.
And with regard to Summit Hills?
Summit Hills is the second district.
Okay.
And so I don't have anything to report on that. But while I do have your attention, the two homicides that we had kind of back to back down in Long Branch or Piney Branch off of Southampton, we've made 2 arrests on that as well. It's no mystery. We were very sure of this when it kind of occurred, but we can confirm that it was gang related. But that's as far as really I'm going to go on that, because a lot of times with those homicide investigations, they have a lot of legs and they continue. So, but very happy with the speed at which we got those subjects in custody.
There's a question in the chat, and then I've got a couple other questions I would ask. Commander, there's a lot of news about fentanyl, of the drug narcotic crimes. What percentage have been fentanyl, please? And what about marijuana?
What are you saying about the marijuana part of it?
He wants to know what percentage of the crimes have been, of the drug narcotic crimes have been fentanyls, and what percentage have been marijuana?
I don't know the percentage of marijuana, but the interesting thing with the fentanyl is when you look at our overdose deaths, and also really our deaths, but across the board, even with the ones that we're saving with Narcan, generally speaking, the drug itself that's being overdosed on is considered a polydrug. So if it's cocaine, it has fentanyl. If it's heroin, it has fentanyl. It just seems like obviously fentanyl is the killer, and they all look the same to the naked eye. So But a lot of times, 90% of the fatalities due to overdose, fentanyl is a part of that poly mixture. As far as marijuana goes, you know, I talked quite a bit about this in our last meeting, but we are making a lot of traffic stops where the odor of marijuana is still present. That does allow us to search vehicles, and as a result, we're getting a lot of guns, and that's just a fact. And so I think with the legalization of marijuana, the new laws and bills being passed, I don't know where that goes, and we'll just see. But I think that Maryland's made their decision. I think I saw something where Garrett County was the only county to not positively vote in, you know, they didn't want the legalization of marijuana, but the rest of the counties in the state did. So we'll see where that goes. But there's going to be a lot of talk leading up into July about what that looks like.
I'll also chime in that talking to Sergeant Bledgy and the rest of the DCAT teams, they had actually a stop about a month ago where they had an individual that had 800 compressed fentanyl pills in his vehicle in downtown Silver Spring. That would be more than enough to kill everybody in Silver Spring if you were to grind that into powder. So we talk to our officers all the time about the safety that they need to be using when they're searching these vehicles. So fentanyl is out there, they're finding them, and they're arresting the individuals.
Thank you for that clarification. Just want to join you in shouting out Ada Villa Toro and El Golfo. They've been great community partners for many of us over the course of the last 10 years, and I'm glad to see they're supporting your efforts in the Long Branch area.
Yep.
I would ask you about this. So today when I was walking through downtown Silver Spring, I saw a patrol car that was parked at the intersection of Fenton and Ellsworth, a couple of officers around, and there was also a car that was in the middle of Ellsworth up near McGinty's, sort of unclear why that was there. Is placing a patrol car at Fenton and Ellsworth something you will do regularly, or was today a one-off?
So I'm going to let Lieutenant Reed talk about that, and also kind of just update you really about the static positions and the officers that we bring in on a daily basis now for high visibility in downtown.
So like Commander McBain said, as we come into the colder months, our CBD bike teams transition from the bikes to the cars because of black ice and other things like that. We want them to be safe. So when they're out, they want to be high visibility. So when they go on foot patrols, just like they do on a bike patrol, I've asked them to park their cars in high visibility areas to be twofold. So that way it can be seen in a high visibility area, but they're also on foot patrols in the area going up and down Ellsworth or Fenton, or running or walking across Veterans Plaza. So we're trying to make the most use out of the marked police car, especially when they're out walking around. So I've asked them to do that on occasion.
Thank you for that. Can either of you talk more about the work that you've been doing with the downtown business owners and the clubs that have been staying open until the crack of dawn? We understand there's some legislation pending up in Rockville, but some of our neighbors have reached out to me and wonder what's the connection between the club staying open and violent crime, gunshots, use of drugs and things like that. Can you add anything? Can you talk about that a little bit?
So I've been working with the other districts, Bethesda, Rockville, and I have been doing weekly reports about what's going on in the early morning hours, and how they're the connection of late night activity. And I'll just say it like this. If we're the only area that stays open until 7 o'clock in the morning with the hookah bars and stuff like that, and Prince George's County and DC and Alexandria and Fairfax are all shut down at 3 o'clock, where are people going to come? they're going to come into Montgomery County, and it causes problems. I continue to work with the businesses that will work with me, such as Society and Cowdy's and all these other locations. And every suggestion I have made about handheld metal detectors and hiring more part-time officers and all these other initiatives, we had not have a call for service at their businesses in 7 months. And we continue to work with those that want to work with us. But through those initiatives, we have worked with Dr. Stoddard and the county's attorney's office. And yes, we have 2 legislations that are set to go when the council members get seated. One is to shut down all business or all nightlife activity at 3 a.m. And the other are initiatives that we have seen during our business compliance checks that are a serious officer and actually first responder safety issue that we saw during these checks, such as the windows being blacked out. You cannot see what's going on in the businesses. If an officer gets a call for service and there's loud music playing, he doesn't know or she doesn't know whether or not they're going into 10 patrons or 1,000 patrons. And so I had a very concerning about that. About having appropriate lighting to the front and to the rear. We're working on initiatives so we can actually do a refund program if they were to set up cameras that can work with us. And we would only go in and check these cameras if we're investigating crimes. So everybody, all the business owners that are working with us, we've had a lot of good feedback from them, and that's where we're proceeding with that. And I think we're going to get there, but we've got a long way to go yet. But we're not resting on our laurels.
Thank you, Lieutenant Reed. That was a great answer. There was a question in the chat. Frank, do you want to answer it? You want to ask it yourself, or should I read it?
Sure. Hi, this is Frank Gilman. I'm with East Silver Spring. Just there is a spate of gunfire incidents, 3 in a week. I can't recall now. I think it was October, maybe early November, in the area around Silver Spring Avenue and Grove. And at the time, I don't know that there was word of any witnesses or anything. I think there was some casings recovered from a rifle. I'm just wondering if it seemed like enough of a concentration in a short period of time that it seemed like something was going on. And I just don't know if there's any investigative leads on that kind of stuff, or if it's anything we could put our fingers on.
So those are what we call non-contact shootings, where no buildings that we can find, or thankfully no citizens were hit. Those shell casings have been recovered. They're with our forensic experts. They look at fingerprints and ballistics to see if they match any known guns. I actually talked to our investigators the other day on that, and we're still waiting on ballistics reports and stuff like that. So I have taken that information with our high visibility enforcement details, and I've actually also passed that on along to Maryland State Police. That continues to be a major help down there. And while we're on that topic, Commander McBain and I were talking about this the other day. MSP sat down with the newly elected governor, and on number 1 on their agenda was to continue the partnership in downtown Silver Spring, because it has just been an amazing team effort. And I'm happy to say I believe that's going to continue on into the new year, and we welcome all their help. But all that information has been put out. That area is on our watch list through our district supervisor, or the George sector supervisors and the patrol officers. But I'm hopefully next time we talk, we'll have more updates on that.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
So Commander McBain, one of my neighbors asked this question, and I'm not sure if this is MCPD issue. The question was, there's a lot of smell of cannabis in downtown. Along Ellsworth, around Veterans Plaza, to the extent that some parents don't want their children going downtown. I wonder if you've got any comments or observations about that and how you would respond to this neighbor.
Well, it's a tough, well, I'm just going to be honest. John McCarthy, the state's attorney from Montgomery County, has made it very clear that he is not going to prosecute possession of marijuana, civil or criminal. And because of that, my officers will not be locking anybody up for possession of marijuana, civil or criminal. So that's the decision that the state of Maryland is making and plans to go. And so if you find that smell annoying, I'd like to say that you might have to get used to it because the state has adopted marijuana as legal, and that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. I do know that there are going to be, they haven't even written the law for this, by the way, but they passed it. So there's a lot of things that are unknown as we move into July of 23, when all these laws go into effect. But one of them is, what exactly are we going to do with people driving and smoking marijuana? And what are we going to do about people using, the easiest analogy is this: we don't allow people to sit in Veterans Plaza and drink a beer or a bottle of liquor. So why would we allow somebody to smoke it? But apparently we are. So I got big issues with that. And so, I've encouraged people to question the executive and question counsel and question the state's attorney's office about that, because I don't know if anybody really has an answer.
Appreciate that. Thank you for that. A couple of questions in the chat. One was, there was an armed carjacking at 126 Hamilton a few weeks ago. Has that case been closed? Armed carjacking in Hamilton.
Unless one of my lieutenants knows, I'd have to say we do get daily reports, but I can't right off the top of my head tell you if that one was closed out or where we are with it. I can certainly find out.
So I can tell you that our district kind of leads all other districts in pursuits and arrests for armed carjackings. The response time for our officers, even though we continue to still be at minimal staff and they continue to go from call to call, has been outstanding. They have had numerous armed carjackings, arrests here as of late. But I, like Commander McBain said, I don't know right offhand if the one on Hamilton has been closed, if that's one of the arrests. But we also have to understand, we have to weigh the cautions when we are pursuing these carjacked individuals, the time of day, the people on the road. We don't want to hurt anybody. We want to do our jobs. We want to arrest the criminals, but sometimes we have to be wise enough to let them go.
Eileen Finnegan has got a question, which it looks like Lieutenant Kim has answered, which is the Dash-In and White Oak is closed with crime tape. Do you know the owner's thoughts on reopening? And is there a fun setup for the clerk killed at the site? I don't know if that's something you know about, but that's a question.
Yeah, actually, I owe Eileen a return email. I've had a pretty busy week so far, but I don't really know. I just know that was a very close-knit bunch of workers there. I mean, clearly that's earth-shattering, right? But it was very upsetting to see how close those employees were to have one of them killed. So we can actually reach out to the owner and to see, but I don't know of any assistance program or anything that the Dash-In's doing right now.
You mentioned at the outset of your presentation about the work that you've been doing at the Long Branch Library.
Mm-hmm.
And you expressed the hope that HHS could take some of that over. Have you had good conversation with HHS about them building up their bandwidth to deal with the incidents and situation in Long Branch and in downtown Silver Spring and other places in the 3rd District?
Yeah, so I really have to say that from very early on in becoming the commander down here, what I really recognized was that it was somewhat of a dead end street, right? So we would deal with homeless individuals and, you know, under the idea that, you know, homelessness is not a crime, but there were some chronic quality of life issues that we were dealing with that, you know, it was tough. But the problem is there's no way out, right? So we would sometimes lock these individuals up. They would go to Rockville, they would be let loose, and they'd come right back to the situation. Our goal is not to keep piling on with charges on homeless individuals. Our goal is to get them help. I've said for a long time now that mental health and homelessness are almost one in the same. And there's a lot of like problems there. And I do see HHS making some positive moves towards these outreach teams and these crisis teams. I always give a shout out to Pathways DC, and I believe that we've contracted with even more resources from them, and they do some amazing work down there. So, and then also, I talked about this a little last time, but you know, the county is really moving towards this restoration center. Whether it's in Rockville, I don't know, but it's kind of following a program like it's similar to what Baltimore City does with LEADS, law enforcement assisted diversion. And so if we can take somebody off the street and not charge them with a crime, but put them in the right direction of help, I think we can make some big changes there. So I still, you know, I realize and I recognize that my officers are going to have to be involved somehow, because sometimes a mental health or even a homeless situation gets very violent. But my goal or my hope is that we don't always have to be the first responders to situations where we end up really almost ramping things up by our arrival to the scene. So I'm going to keep working with HHS. I think that they're on the right path. And I just, as we move into 23 and get through, you know, this winter is going to be tough. But as we get into 23, I'm hoping that they expand the program, the crisis team programs, and that they take more of a kind of lead role in homelessness and mental health.
Thank you. A question from Ebony Govan.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all for doing this. And I logged on late, so this may have been addressed, but I live in Seton Square, right off of Lockwood, not far from the Enclave. And I was just wondering, is there going to be, because there was the carjacking at the Popeyes, and the Popeyes was robbed, and the carjacking a couple of weeks ago that I think you have people in custody for, and then the terrible situation at the Dash-In, and I know there've been some things at White Oak Shopping Center. So I was just wondering, is there going to be like any increased sort of police patrolling presence around this area, and like back to from like sort of the enclave back to like Stewart Lane and back in there? And yeah, that was my question. Is there going to be because I even see people sort of hanging in here sometimes.
Yes, ma'am.
In our park areas and things, and I don't want to approach people and don't want to call the police unnecessarily, but at the same time, so that's my question. Thank you.
Yep, and I appreciate your question, Ebony. Yeah, we have moved additional resources up there. I don't know when you came onto the call, but I also we're moving a camera surveillance system up there, and we're actually my request is going to be to put it in the Dash-In parking lot, the Shell gas station parking lot. I don't think they're going to resist that, but the goal there is I can kind of keep eyes on the Enclave, the entrance exit on Lockwood, and also a little bit of the corridor of New Hampshire Avenue and down Lockwood towards the Popeyes. But I've also just put some increased patrols up in that section in basically as a response to a pretty bad couple weeks.
Ebony, I'll jump on that too, that I talked to Sergeant Brenner, our community services sergeant who runs our community engagement division out of the 3rd District. And we were talking about doing more coffee with a cop and other community engagement events in the enclave. And I will tell you that even though the officers, the detectives, the canine, everybody did a great job, the citizens also in the enclave did a great job too, because as officers were hot on the heels of the suspects, you had a lot of citizens were pointing us in the right directions and were wanting to help. So we're going to continue with those partnerships and build on what we've already started.
Thank you. That's encouraging to hear. Thank you so much.
A couple questions and then we'll end. We'll start first with Eric Cathcart, then Carlene will go to you. Eric, you have a question?
Lieutenant Reed, I intend to get to know you. I'm a community leader in George 2 sector. So I really look forward to meeting you and getting you involved in our community. Thank you. What was we have 2 brand new county council members in District 5, Kristen Mink and District 4, Kate Stewart. And if this sort of goes out to the commander, Commander, what do our new county council members need to know? How can we get them to understand our challenges here in this part of Montgomery County, and how can we get them on board with us? And I just want to, it's a general question, but I think it's really important that our new council members, we're trying to ramp them up as quickly as possible. So and maybe the second part of that is, are you still down? How many officers? What resources do we need to do to help you get your job done?
Sure. Thank you very much, Eric. So I will say that Kate Stewart and I have spoken twice now. Friday night, she is going to be doing a ride along with her chief of staff. She's going to actually ride in downtown Silver Spring and work with an evening shift that night. And I think it's important that that our council members get out there and see what our officers are dealing with and what a typical Friday night looks like. And then Kristen Mink, she actually responded out to the homicide at the Shell station, and she and I spoke for a little while out there. I invited her to do a ride along as well, and she took me up on that. So we're going to schedule that as well. My goal is when the council members come, so this Friday, I intend to just sit down with Ms. Stewart and just have that conversation and to kind of discuss, there's a lot of, and I know that the Chief Jones met with the group the other night on the Federation call, but there's some county-wide issues with retention and hiring and things like that. And I know that the chief of police is having those conversations with our new council members. And so, that will continue to be pressed on them about different, things that would encourage officers to want to come to Montgomery County. We've said for a long time now, where there used to be thousands and thousands of applicants, all these agencies in the DMV were all vying for the same kind of group of good cops, right? And so it's gotten a lot harder to get police officers hired. I just lost 2 more officers starting January 1. And so sometimes, like I've said this before, I've had officers come back, grass always isn't greener on the other side. And officers have left and come back, but I'm still having officers leave. And so that's going to be something that we're going to have to work on. But really, and I think for people that have been on this Safe Silver Spring, I respectfully speak my mind, and I say things that challenge people, and support from the state's attorney, support from the executive, support from our council members is something that we need. I think I saw support from Kristen Mink the other night, being out on that call, and she followed up that evening with with a nice text to me, thanking me and my officers and detectives for the hard work. And so that's a good thing. And sometimes it's just a positive interaction like that can kind of, because I think people have expectations of, police and council or executive are always going to fight. And, my position has always been really, let's just talk and see if we can kind of come to an agreement on what's beneficial for the community.
Thank you for that answer, Colleen Ponder.
Yeah, yes. Hi. And thank you for mentioning County Council Member Kristen Mink. I have questions about the surveillance systems. I heard them mentioned in terms of being able to provide information after a crime is committed.
Mhm.
So are you looking at, are you looking at these cameras where they are? Another one on Bonifant, it's huge and ugly, but are you looking at these cameras in real time? Are they being monitored in real time, or are you using them, as you talked about, with putting them inside some of the clubs and that kind of thing, and using them to gather information when you are looking for something specific after an incident?
Yeah, we don't put them inside of any clubs. They're just outside, but we have the ability to look real time, and that helps us with kind of identifying, sometimes we have issues where hundreds and hundreds of people are dumping out of bars in downtown Silver Spring. And so it helps us with our response, because as many people in this call will realize, that over the summer, multiple times we called officers from all 5 other districts to help us with kind of riotous kind of activity and crime. So we use them. We have the ability to look at the camera systems with our computers in the car or at our desk. But oftentimes, especially when we have a shooting with a victim, we run into basically where nobody saw anything. We have very little cooperation with witnesses or people that are still in the area. And oftentimes we can go back to the camera systems and we can get tag numbers. We can see, kind of look and get an identity of certain suspects and different types of activity like that.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the answer. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I don't see any more hand raised. Last chance. Anybody have any questions for Commander McBain and his lieutenants? Not seeing somebody.
Alan, I'll just say that I know that Lieutenant Galladora, this is his first meeting with us, and he's really only been here for a little bit, but I am excited to have him with me. He is going to oversee the Henry sector, which is, as you saw on the map, it's the borders Prince George's County, a little bit of DC, Piney Branch, Long Branch, and he's already been heavily engaged down there. So I look for some really good things out of him.
And I was going to recognize him as we signed off. Welcome, Lieutenant. And Commander McBain, thank you so much for joining us again for our quarterly meeting with downtown Silver Spring. We'd ask everybody who's interested to follow us on Facebook. We can leave questions and suggest initiatives for the police and for our organization. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a happy holiday, a safe holiday, and we will check back with you in February, I think. So,
all righty.
Take care, everybody, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everybody.
Good night. Happy holidays.